Talking financial organization and a professional practice does not have to be boring. Are you ready for a few money in, money out ideas? It's Susan Gunn coming directly to your head to make you think. Can you handle the truth? Because she is known for being energetic, laughs a lot, and gives honest, sometimes direct, but always practical advice. It's time now for Money In, Money Out.
Welcome to Season 2 of the Money In, Money Out podcast. What a great year this has been. I am kidding. The podcast began at the COVID-19 pandemic shutdown. I had already planned to begin a Money In, Money Out podcast in April, but because of the urgent need to disseminate timely information to the professional practice community, I started recording within a week. I was a guest on so many webinars and podcasts, providing information and guidance to so many different callers, but I really wanted a means to streamline the information directly to you, the people that need it. I had great guests in Season 1. If you've not listened to the prior podcast, now's your chance. And I have great guests planned for Season 2. I'm real excited. This year has certainly been unlike any other year in my life. What was the norm, in my opinion, may never return. 7 months later since shutdowns, and the pandemic has not ended. There are promises of a vaccine, and some treatments have been honed, but availability of those treatments is still not widespread. The past 7 months have been overflowing with emotional extremes. Businesses have been pushed to the max of their resources. Unfortunately, some wonderful, hardworking human beings have found themselves without employment and their pride out the window, dependent upon government resources to put food on the table for their family. Many more have found themselves homeless. Kind of reminds me of the pictures we've always seen of the Great Depression. We're not there yet, though. We're not there yet. But those lines are staggering, waiting for food banks just to provide food. I'm so thankful for those food banks to provide food to so many people. Many that began the year with us are no longer with us. Many passed away from COVID-19 complications. Many just passed away suddenly, leaving us to miss the laughter and the joy they added to our lives. I've had a lot of friends this year that have lost their parents. It's kind of weird. And if I hear one more time we're just at that age, I'm going to scream. Not on air, I promise. I've known so many to get COVID-19. Some have been hospitalized and are still recovering. This disease is unmerciful to so many, while others barely have symptoms. And yet, even in the midst of hundreds of thousands dying in our country alone, there are still those who mock the severity of the disease. I listen. I don't get it. And I don't understand. But pray they never have to know the severity of COVID-19 all the same. I lost a dear friend September 1st, not from COVID. I was hoping to have her join me on this podcast, the first episode of the second season. I wanted her to offer words of wisdom, backed by her 52 years in the dental industry. She was only 4 years older than me. And when I saw a Facebook post about her death, I thought it was a bad joke. I called her cell, hoping she would answer her normal, cheery voice, "Hey, sis." But her brother Tom answered instead, and we cried together. 23 years ago, Sally McKenzie was one of the first believers in what I had to offer the dental community. She and I were like souls in our passions to help, being direct, honest, and definitely laughing as much as we could. I have struggled with changing what I thought would be the podcast guest schedule in light of her death. I called a couple of colleagues believing I needed a dynamic first episode of the season. Yeah, nothing worked out. And quite frankly, I'm still shocked by Sally's death. I still wanted Sally for my program. So I just started writing a few things down, and then I decided I needed to call her brother Tom. We spent a couple of hours together on the phone, just sharing stories and laughter and quite a few tears. I decided, you know what? Sally can still be in the episode. And then I would bring you some of her stories, and definitely stories of a life well lived and fully lived. It's hard to have a favorite Sally story. I have quite a few. We laughed a lot together. But this one would be in the top 3. It very well could be one of those stories that only cracks me up, but I'm going to share it with you anyway, so just bear with me. We were both speaking at the Hinman meeting in 2008 in downtown Atlanta, staying on the same floor, the very top floor of the Omni Hotel, when the tornado hit at 9:30 at night. After the tornado went through me and my hotel room, causing great damage to both, I could eventually make my way down to her room, banging on her door. Now, picture this in your mind as I'm telling you this. It was tumultuous in my room. I lost the ceiling, the windows exploded out. The tornado literally went through me as I hovered in the bathroom and the room. And so I felt the full impact of the tornado on the 15th floor. In that mindset, I finally made it down to Sally's room at the other end of the hall, and I banged on her door. Even now, thinking about how she answered the door just cracks me up. I've just been through the most traumatic experience of my life, to which this day I still have PTSD from every time a storm peeps its head. But Sally answered the door while she was washing her face with cold cream, rubbing it all in, and the sirens, the hotel sirens, finally blared. Finally. She was looking completely unbothered and answered her door in a yes kind of mode. And I said, "We gotta go. We have to go downstairs." And she smiled and kind of stared at me for a second and said, "Okay, I'll come down when I finish." I didn't know what that meant, but I wasn't going to wait around for her. The more interesting contrast was she was living in California at the time, and I was living in Texas. I should have been used to tornadoes and should have been more calm, right? But the tornado only shook her windows. And with earthquakes, she was used to a little shaking, and she didn't see what the big deal was. A few years later, we were talking about that night and laughing at the contrast. She said she had no idea of what happened to me until she saw the pictures of my room. But she said I looked like hell, and she couldn't figure out why. She said that's why she just stared at me, and she was trying to figure it out. To which I responded, "Well, you didn't look so great either. Have you seen your face with the cold cream on all over it?" We spent the next 10 minutes jabbing at each other and laughing hysterically. Boy, I tell you what, she wasn't just a colleague, but she was a dear friend. The number of our phone calls always outweighed the number of our actual in-person visits, due to only the separation of our miles. But we tried to call every couple of months just to check in, see how it was going. We had our work in common, but that's not what united our hearts. To honor her in a way that she would be completely embarrassed, let me share with you a couple of lessons that I learned from Sally. First and foremost, follow your passion. She did for 52 years. If you follow your passion, you can build a viable business. But that business better be profitable, because you have to pay the bills. I can almost hear her saying, "Dang right." She was a voice in an industry to help dentists figure out their business. And she was very passionate about helping others succeed. When she lived in California, she would speak to the dental students at Loma Linda University. She loved pouring into them before they went into the real world of dentistry, hoping to encourage them and provide them tools. We talked about how much fun that was. I speak at Texas A&M Baylor College of Dentistry in Dallas every year for the same reason. It's a joy to provide them some very valuable information before they become dentists. It's my favorite time of year, and it was Sally's too. That inpouring wasn't limited to dentistry, by the way. Tom told me about Sally buying a car 2 weeks before her death. While the young man delivering the car was driving it to her home, he said he wondered what kind of person she'd be. He told Tom Sally greeted him at the door and said, "Hi, come on in." And they sat and talked for over an hour, during which time Sally asked him if he really liked what he did. Was he happy? Or would he like to do something else? That just sounds just like her, doesn't it? He was amazed at the time she invested in him, and he realized he truly does love what he does. I wasn't surprised at all to hear that she did that, because you know what? That's who Sally was. That's exactly who she was. From the age of 16 working in a dental practice to 52 years later, owner of a dental consulting firm recognized internationally for 40 years, her passion was investing in others' lives. Never having children, her business was in effect her child. It was her baby. I believe if she was here, she would tell you it was well worth it and that she loved every minute of it. And from the countless posts since her death, those investments were felt worldwide. For someone who gave lots of advice, she wasn't very good at taking it, though. Well, I'm not either, to be fair, which is why we were good friends. If there was something difficult going on, though, I'd give her a call because I knew she wouldn't hold back in telling me the truth. She never minced words. Sometimes I liked them, sometimes I didn't, but I always listened. In that respect, she would tell you to listen to those who love you. When they share something with you, do not dismiss it or them. She was also not good for asking for help. Hindsight's always 2020. Interesting that the year is 2020 as well. Sally would tell you that there is nothing worth stressing over. Now she would tell you that. Sally died of a heart attack in her sleep. She carried the burden of 2020 on her shoulders. Like so many consultants I know, she tried to give back to her community, hoping to help them thrive during uncertain times. She was constantly trying to figure out how to help, which caused more stress. Tom believes it's the stress that subsequently killed her. I've been there. The practices that we love, the doctors that we meet, trying to figure out new paths to help them on, staying on top of all the changes, and the drama coming out of some of the Facebook dental groups. In one group, they threw Sally and other consultants under the bus. I'm sure she found out about it. I'm like really pretty sure she found out about it. But I wasn't the one that told her. I defended her on the post with rebuttal post, but I couldn't tell her about the post. I knew it would hurt her heart. It was rude and hateful and unbelievably immature from a group of practice employees that were highly stressed as well. Not everyone was a fan of Sally's. Not everybody's a fan of mine. But no one deserves to be mistreated like that. Truly, that would have broken her heart. The second thing I learned from Sally is writing is a legacy that is left behind. But then she would tell me, but leave out the gushy stories and stuff. That one makes me laugh. It's also why she'd be embarrassed by all this gushy attention, by the way. As I had often, Sally requested an article for one of her publications this past July. She has published at least one newsletter every week since 2002. That's around 968 newsletters, full of free information provided to the dental community. But wait, there's more. As if that wasn't enough, she created practicemanagementlearning.com that is home to 60 free practice management webinars. Free. And the dentistnetwork.net is also a website that she built that has network advisors that Sally trusted. On that website, you can subscribe to email newsletters full of great advice and information. There's hundreds of archived newsletters on that site, but that doesn't even include 2 other publications that she created and spun off. She was voracious in providing practice management tools, giving back to dentistry. One of those with a New Dentist magazine. She had a real heart for new dentists starting out in dentistry. Even providing all this information, she was not quick with advice, but listened first. Having been friends with Sally for over 20 years, I saw this ability mature with her as she grew older. She would always take an armchair approach to asking the right questions, and more often the questions that no one else would ask, or maybe they were afraid to ask. She was real. She was internationally respected by so many, and yet was so down to earth in her friendships. Life had honed her to be real. She had learned to cook healthy soups, loved no-meat margarita pizzas, wine, and definitely her Grey Goose martinis, of which was always limited to 1. I think they were a little bit on the strong side to begin with. But let me tell you what she also loved. She had 2 cute dogs, and she loved her 4-legged animals. They were her kids. A few years back, we had a conversation about how stories sometimes make the point, and that perhaps that was just a difference in our writing styles, because she thought stories should never be included in any writing. She was proudly a just the facts, ma'am kind of gal. See why she would hate this podcast? But I learned what her point was. Her point was to give the tools and the steps that the dental community needed. Again, it was her passion. It was her life's work. But it was not her life. Most do not know that Sally also volunteered in her community, especially when she returned to live in her hometown of Barnesville, Ohio. She was so excited when she called to tell me that she was moving from La Jolla to Barnesville, her hometown. That's where she grew up. She had reconnected with her dear high school friends, and it stirred her heart to move back closer to them. She was so happy when she told me about that. I could hear the joy. It was something that had been missing. She even said that. And so she was excited. Just a few months ago, she was awarded the Barnesville Area Education Foundation Hall of Fame Award for being a leading edge innovator within the dental industry. She moved back and she renovated a beautiful house. But then, those winters, they're a little cold in Ohio. And she decided that Florida was calling her name. She moved back to Tarpon Springs, Florida, and that's where Tom lives now. But she had definitely left her mark on her hometown. I know her friends there will miss her too. Sally believed in giving back in whatever way was possible, believing also that her gifts were from God, that they were definitely God-given. And she was always open to what that meant and what that entailed, and persevered. So what would Sally tell you as a business owner? First, as it's been said already, and you'll hear it more again, follow your passion. I think she would also say that doesn't mean a tunnel approach. Her business grew and evolved as society and business did, and as her clients grew and evolved. She never ever had it in her head that she had to put it in the sand. She always looked around and looked for opportunities to change and to grow. She never said, it's always worked in the past, and so I should just do it that way. Nope. She was open to see what needed to change. And these past few years, she was ready to wind down a little bit. She didn't want to be on the road as much as she had been in the past, so she turned down the myriad of speaking engagements that came every year. Her choice, her timing. Second, if your passion isn't making you profitable, it's time to find something else. Just because you want to do something doesn't mean it's the right time or the right place. Over the years, she counseled many who wanted to be consultants. She hired quite a few team members, consulting team members, because she believed in them and she wanted to help them along with her own passion. So many of them remained her close friends. You know who you are if you're listening. But being profitable was more than just paying the bills. She also wanted them to be able to plan for a future and to have enough reserve to reinvest in the business. Many of her writings, webinars, and speaking topics were about being mindful of the bottom line, watching overhead, both business and personally. She was always fearful of dentists getting in over their heads in debt, by the way, which is so easy to do. We joked this summer about how COVID-19 has sure cut down on the eating out bills, but increased the Amazon bills. Third, she spoke most often about the major labor of a dental practice, and that's the area she contributed to in my book, Money In, Money Out. Employees are most of the highest cost of the practice. That's why the employee account is strategically placed in the QuickBooks practice management chart of accounts that I created so that the dentist could easily see the cost and associated and the percentage to income that was. But she encouraged the practice owner to evaluate every aspect of business flow in their practice, from patient retention to collections to scheduling to insurance. As a business owner, we must be willing to look at what is working and what is not working. Over the years, we had both done that for each other. Businesses will fail if they're unwilling to do that or don't take the time to do it annually. She was always fascinated with the current trends were in embezzlement. She always wanted to hear the stories. Well, actually, everybody always wants to hear the stories, but Sally always wanted to hear, which was interesting, but she always wanted to hear what was happening. But when she asked, it was truly because she wanted to learn how the embezzlements were happening so she could better advise her clients and be on the lookout. So follow your passion, make it profitable, or move on. Oversee your collections and your expenses. That's a pretty basic 3-step business model to adhere to. I remember when Sally told me about being contacted by a monk in a monastery at Mount Athos, Greece. She was amazed, but Father Basil was the monk doing dentistry for the other monks in the monastery. He had no training, no dentistry background. If I remember right, it was about a tooth that might have needed pulling, but Father Basil reached out to Sally after reading one of her articles. Sally was amazed and curious. This led to email interactions that changed her life. It was definitely God ordained, and it provided the monks the right connections in dentistry to help them. With permission, I want to read what was written and read by a Greek Orthodox monk at Sally's graveside service at St. Herman's of Alaska Monastery Cemetery in Platina, California. And I quote, Sally McKenzie's first contact with orthodoxy occurred unexpectedly. One day at the end of November 2006, she received an email from a monk of Mount Athos, Greece, who was responsible for the dentistry clinic in his monastery and was seeking help from her on a matter of endodontics. The monk had found her email in a magazine of endodontics that was published in Greece. Sally not only replied with a wholehearted desire to help him, but she also put him in contact with an endodontic clinic in Las Vegas and sent him a parcel with tools, disposable material, and lessons on endodontics worth at least 2,000 euros. She had some questions for him, kindly asking what a monk is, where Mount Athos is, and what orthodoxy is. Things she had never heard of until then. After a very short correspondence with the monk, she was inflamed with an interest in orthodoxy and wanted to see for herself an Orthodox church. As she had an upcoming trip to Boston for a dental conference, she found on the internet a church close to where she would be, St. Anthony the Great, and went to visit it. When she arrived, she tried to open the door, but it was locked. She tried several times to open the door, but to no avail. She turned around to leave, but to her surprise, she saw in front of her an unusually dressed woman who told her the door was open to try it again. Sally turned around, and the moment she tried again, the door opened wide. But the strangely dressed woman behind her had disappeared in a split second. Upon entering and gazing upon the beautiful icons and frescoes adorning the church, she noticed with amazement that the unusually garbed woman who had spoken to her only moments before was the same one depicted on the icon of the All-Holy Mother of God. This was an enormous consolation for Sally and a motivation to learn more. She decided to read the book of the life of Father Seraphim Rose, for whom she had acquired great reverence. This linked her to the decision to visit his monastery in Platina, California. The next day, while on the road, she felt someone pushing her and falling down. She broke her leg. The trip to visit the monastery was postponed for a whole year, but the next year, something similar happened, and she broke her arm. I remember this, by the way. She determined this wasn't going to stop her. When she visited the monastery, she decided to get baptized. The baptism took place in Dubacella Creek, a couple of miles from the St. Xenia's Chapel in Wildwood, California. Sally passed away on the eve of Father Seraphim's passing away anniversary, and her passing away on that day is not accident or coincidence to all of the monks of Mount Athos. She arranged many years ago to be buried at Father Seraphim's monastery. Sally continued her work of helping the monk dentist of Mount Athos, as well as the countless good deeds in the U.S. and abroad. May her memory be eternal. Amen and amen. These beautiful words were written because she invested in helping wherever she was led. Sally's faith was a foundation to her heart's passion in helping wherever she could. And as most people, Sally's direct, heartfelt advice was given out of the experiences of her life. Her last podcast with Dental Town's Howard Farran is just one of the many examples. Howard and Sally talked about the pandemic and made some survival suggestions. In a lighter moment, Howard responded to Sally's comment of, "Not in my lifetime," in regard to DSOs being the norm. And Howard jokingly asked her, "Now we need to know how long you expect to live." She laughed as she responded, "Another 50 years. I had to stop the recording when I heard it and take a very deep breath. It was just 2.5 months later that she died. We just never know. We just never know. That's why it's so important for us to seize the opportunities that are given to us today. She and Howard were great friends, and the free flow of the conversation exemplifies their friendship. It is a relevant conversation, and I recommend you give it a listen. My last article that Sally requested was in August, the Dentist Network newsletter. It was about the 2018 ADA survey on employee theft in the dental practice. And by the way, it had no gushy stories, it just had the facts. She was always such an encourager and a major referrer. She kept telling me, "Please send me more articles. I just need to get you out there more." What an encourager. Her last written words to the community she served was August 28th on bonus plans. She died September 1st. I've wondered what she would have written if she knew it was the last time she could help somebody, the last time her voice would be heard. Here's what I think she would say to everybody listening. Life is short. Life is just too short, regardless of how long it is. Live it with people who love you back. Do not be afraid of new experiences. Live life as fully as you can and embrace it with passion. To the dental community that she served, I think she would encourage you to be wise in all of your decisions, to be honest, to be fair dealing, to be compassionate with everything, your patient care, your employees, your family, to not forget to care for your team members. I think she'd also say that clinical is only a very small part of what makes a dental practice successful, and that you should always lead with kindness. To my dental consultant colleagues, I want to say, Sally left us with encouragement to follow our passion. Let's continue to tackle that passion with all the gusto that she modeled for us. To be honest with our clients, to be fair dealing, to provide what we say we can provide, and if we can't, to not say it. But let's not forget, we're not on that path alone. We're all in this together. Seems to be the theme of 2020, right? Stress divided can be handled together. Sally said if you work hard and help others, it will come back to her. Actually, what she said was it'd come back to you. But she did work hard and she did help others, and it did come back to her. Her life was full of so many of those examples. In Sally's words, again during the podcast with Howie, there is a gift in every tragedy. You may not know what the gift is at the moment, but it'll come to you. She had a silver lining perspective. You know, the tragedy is that Sally is no longer present with us. Quite frankly, I don't see the gift yet. But her loss teaches me to value those in my life maybe a little more. If I listen carefully, I can almost hear her chuckle and say, that's my story and I'm sticking to it. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much, my dear friend Sally, for pouring out your heart to all of us. And there are so many of us who followed yours and so many others' footsteps as practice management consultants that we owe so much to. You paved the way. Life well done, my friend. You can rest now. We got it from here. Again, this certainly was not the episode that I had planned. But I hope you've gained some encouragement and motivation to pursue your passion. Until next time, take care, be safe.
That's a wrap for this podcast of Money In, Money Out. Thanks for listening. Be sure to write down the most valuable tip you learned today so you don't forget it. And remember, you can find out more about all the valuable books and services Susan has to offer at www.susangunsolutions.com.